Okay everyone, welcome back to part 2. Isn't this looking nice? Now I will go back to the sky. I'm just not 100% happy with this. I want to make it a little bit stronger and make the clouds that little bit darker. So we'll come back to that soon, okay? Now, on to these lovely bluebell fields. Okay, let's crack on. Let's have a bit of fun with this. Let's see what we can do with this. Okay, first of all, I'm going to take a little flat brush. I'm going to first draw the lines to get my direction, okay? And what I'm going to do is take some, you see the dark lines, kind of a browny, dark browny mauvey colour. So I'm going to take some burnt umber and I'm going to take a little crimson, okay? And then a hint of cobalt blue. Now that may go a bit greeny, but just keep adding a little bit of pink crimson into this as you go. You'll end up with a nice warm browny kind of a pinky colour. And I have a tiny bit of thinners in this. Let's start with the first one over here. Let's just try and get our perspective right, okay? So the first one, it sort of comes at a very slight angle, doesn't it? And it gets wider and wider as it comes down. Okay? Just like that. This will just be the basis of our perspective, that's all. It's just to get our perspective, nothing else. Then we have another short one. Everything kind of seems to come into this area, doesn't it? So everything kind of comes across into this center area, slightly to one side of the center of the board. So next, let's go like this. And I'm going to come right over then with this one. It's really just to get a sense of where we're going with all of these. That's all it is. Just a very, very, very rough perspective, okay? And I won't think I need to go any further than that. Maybe we could put one or two small ones just to give us an idea of where our brush strokes will be going. Now, that's it. Okay, the next thing we can do is, I could probably stick with this brush and fill in a nice dark purple all the way across. So I'm just going to clean my brush very, very quickly. And I'm going to make up a nice rich colour for this. Now, I always start with the darker colours first, okay? A general rule of thumb with oil painting, something like this, is dark colours first and then your highlights on top of that. And I'm going to do some lovely fan brush work then in a moment. So let's get some magenta, little crimson, and a hint of phaylo blue. I want to go for a nice rich dark purple, okay? More magenta, more crimson, more blue. And I want to make this on the darker side of purple, so I might take a touch of black as well, okay? Just a touch. I have very, very little thinners in this now as well, okay? And what I'm going to do is, I'm not going to worry about the shape of the bushes just yet, okay? I'm just going to focus on getting in the darks. You can see it's sort of dark on one side, isn't it? So I'm just going to flick it up like this and do the same on this side. And look, this is all the very, very early stages now, okay? So don't try and get this right first time. It'll take a couple of tries. So this is going to be the dark side, and then we're going to have the light coming around like this, okay? The light side, we'll use our fan brush for that. So I'm going to go on the left-hand side of these lines with my dark colour just from the bottom up, okay? I'm going to flick it up with my brush. And again, I'm just keeping this very loose, okay? And you just keep it very loose. We're going to be covering most of this anyway. So don't try and get it right first time. Look, I'm just putting a very quick dark line all the way across. using the very tip of my brush, flicking it upwards, okay? And then we've a lot of lines kind of coming across here like this. Let's just put these in with the brush. Very, very quickly, and they're all coming sort of into one area. Isn't that right? Now we don't need to go really any further than this, I don't think. So we have a very loose idea of the perspective of our painting. Now we have two ways of doing this. We could use a nice clean fan brush, or I could use a large stubby brush. Let me see if I can find it here. It's here somewhere. Where is it? Where has it gone? My large stubby brush. Oh, there it is. Or we could use this. I'm thinking I might start with this just for now. But what I am going to do first is, with a fan brush, I'm going to just roughen up these brown lines just to make them look more like a gravel, that kind of a thing. So I'm just going to dampen that very gently, take a little burnt umber, and I'm going to take a little crimson, okay? And I'm first just going to go along those like that, okay? Just dab along. It's really just to give a bit of texture and the idea of a kind of a gravel path in between these lovely bluebell plants, okay? That's really all it is. That's all I'm doing. Dab, 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 dab. Let's go again. Up here like this. I'm following the direction of the lines, okay? Try not to go like this sideways. You really don't have to. It's only just to create a little tiny amount of texture in between these bluebells, okay? Now I don't need to go any further than that because you can't really see anything further on. And then I'm going to take a little hint of black with some magenta, and I'm just going to create a little shadow so it gets slightly darker as it goes in, and I'm going to soften it outward, you see? That's all. Even take some of that dark blue as well. So I'm going to basically soften the bottom of the dark side of the plants into the gravel roadway. That's all I'm doing. Just gives a nice little effect of the depth. It gives you a bit of depth and a bit of darkness in there. Soften it out. Okay. Now I'm going to leave it at that for now. It's starting to come together. You can already start to see the perspective kind of coming into play. I'm going to use a large stubby brush for this next section, okay? You can use a fan brush if you like and go around like this. That would be a good idea as well. But I just want to try my large stubby for this, okay? I'm going to dampen it. Any large flat brush you have like this, which is kind of slightly worn and rough, will do perfectly well for this. But I'm just going to try this first. I'm going to make a slightly lighter purple now. So I'll dampen the brush. I'll take a little crimson, a little cobalt, and a little white, okay? Now I want more blue in this. I'm not going to go too light with this because I want to keep my nice rich highlights for the very end. Let's take a little hint of magenta as well. A little more white, a little more cobalt, a little more magenta. So you can see I just keep going, adding these until I get the colour I want. I'm thinking a little more magenta. I'll keep away from crimson just for now. I want this to be more purpley. Magenta is perfect for that. Now with that loaded on the tip of my brush, or your fan brush, I'm simply going to go, I might start over here and get this filled in. So I'll start at the top and I'm simply going to just dab along like that. That gives me a nice rough feeling. Now I won't go any further than that, okay? So I just go along like this, dab, 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 dab. really just creating a little bit of texture. And you can already start to see nice little layers coming into play. Isn't that right? And as it comes over further here, you can see where the sun is, it's going to start getting warmer. So I'm going to take some more magenta in this and a little crimson. So they're now going to start getting redder, pinker as they come across. Because the sun is hitting all of these, giving a lovely warm colour. Soften that in there. Okay, a little bit of texture. Then I'm going to just carry on across, and what I'm going to do is start building up my lines. So I'm going to go like this, right down all the way, and then we'll do another one. So you can sort of begin to see the idea. You can see how I'm going to play, how I'm kind of working this. I'm going to put a little dark line here and there, just to give the impression of the dark side of some of these, because remember, some of these are catching the sun, so you have a dark side and a light side. So let me just take a little phthalo blue, little crimson and magenta. Now, so for this one example, I'm going to start here, giving this a nice dark side here along here, okay? Just like that, leave it disappear off. We could put a little bit of that colour on the other one. And again, this is the early stages, okay? I'm not going to go right in and try and finish this all at once. I'm just building up my layers, getting my perspective right in the painting first. We can worry about highlights and stuff like that later. Let's try this one. Now, when they're coming closer like this, I'm going to put the brush upright like this, okay? Just like that. Then let that turn slightly. So I'm going to turn at the top. And look, your fan brush would be perfect for this as well, okay? You can use your fan brush if you're more comfortable with your fan brush like that. It's completely up to yourself. But I'm basically just building up my layers as I go. I'm going to start adding more magenta into these, make them a little bit more pinky. I think a little bit more pink would help, don't you think? And then turn it towards the top. Now, if you're looking for these brushes, I sell these in a set of 3, okay? You can just click the link below and order some of these wonderful brushes. They're fantastic for this. So I'm just going to go all the way up like this. This one is going to come at a slight angle over this way, okay? I'm going, like, you know, I can see on the reference photograph there, it's slightly different, but I'm going to give this a little bit to one side here. Just again to help with the feeling of perspective going off into the distance. So, yeah, that's not bad now at all. That's not bad. The next thing I'm going to do is, with the same brush, I'm going to get some nice real dark colour. I'm going to take some magenta and some black, okay? Magenta, black. 2 nice rich dark colours. And I'm going to go along the bottom again and just come up like this, creating the dark section of these. And you see the technique I just used here, right? Let me show you. I'm basically kind of going up like this, straight up, and then I'm turning a little. You see that? I'm turning the brush as I go. That gives me that lovely curve on the bush. So look what we have already. Beautiful painting done already. It's just so easy. Now I'm going to take some phaylo blue, some magenta and some crimson, and I really want to go with some nice rich kind of bluey shadows. Little bit of blue. I think that little touch of blue will really help. And I'm going to darken some of these off in the distance as well. You can see there's a couple of kind of dark lines off in the distance. Just getting in the darks. So, it's not looking bad already, is it? The next step now is the exciting part. I'm going to start using my fan brush and getting some beautiful bright colours in here. I need to get some magenta. My apologies. And it's such a wonderful colour if you're painting bluebells and all that kind of thing. Magenta is just perfect. I'm going to use a nice shiny new fan brush. Nice and soft, bristle. It's Winton, okay? A Winton. Lovely and soft, and they're very long lasting. Let's dampen this and let's go and have a bit of fun with this now. This is exciting, this part. I love doing this part. I'm going to take some magenta, a little hint of phaylo, and I just keep referring back to your reference photograph to get that colour just right, or near enough. Now plenty of white in this and a tiny amount of thinners. The thinners will just help soften that colour ever so slightly. And let me just keep going with this until I get the right colour that I think will work. Now that's not a bad colour so far. The thing with this is I don't want to go right in and put very bright highlights in straight away. I want to build it up very slowly. So I'm going to go with this nice medium little tone first. And let's have a go. Let's try this one here. Now the technique for this is, it's quite simple. I'm simply going to turn the brush as I'm dabbing, like this, okay? In that curve. So I'm going to turn the brush. Let's try it. So I'm going to cut into my dark here, okay? You see these dark lines? So I want to put my brush in front of that path. So I'm simply going to go over and I'm going to turn like this, look. So I'm turning the brush, you see that? Turning the brush, and when it starts running out, just reload your brush then again with nice thick paint on the top, and then as it gets smaller you can use the corner of your fan brush. So I'm literally creating that lovely curve on the brush, you see that? Just like that. Let's try that again. Let's mix up a bit more colour. I might go for a slightly more pinky hue this time. So more magenta in the mix this time. I'm thinking just a little bit more on the pinky side. Might be a little bit nicer. So let's try it on this. And then as it goes off into the distance, I'm just going to simply dab very lightly. And then come down and just keep showing that curve, okay? So let's try this one. This one out, the light is hitting it really on the side. So we can go really strong on the front here, okay? And let's put another small one just in here. Already we have some really lovely perspective going on, don't we? And it's simply a case of just repeating this all the way along. So mix up plenty of paint now. Let's not be shy with the paint. Let's go really mix proper amounts of paint to keep us going for all the way across here. Blue, magenta and some white. And let's go on the top of this one. And remember, just keep loading your brush. And let that disappear off into the distance. And I will be putting lots of thicker paint now on this fan brush as well in a moment when this is done, okay? Just to give us lots of thick, kind of upright bluebells. But I just want to try and get my kind of perspective lines first. So I'm kind of, see, I'm pushing them all the way in and I'm softening them in very gently. So aren't we getting there? Slowly but surely we are getting there. Let's take more magenta, more white. And as it comes across, it's going to start warming. So just more magenta in the mix, okay? So let's go across here, look. So a lot more magenta, nice and pinky. And we'll put another one across here. It's simply just dabbing with the tip of the fan brush. That's all I'm doing. Bringing the magenta just slightly down so it's under the sun, that colour. And just create a few little lines off in the distance. Like that. Isn't that lovely? Just so simple, so simple, but very effective. Now, the next thing I want to do is, I am going to take my other fan brush, okay, and I'm just going to get some real dark colour again. I'm going to take some black and some crimson, alright? And I just want to darken in here in some parts, okay? Just to sort of separate some of the bushes. I'm going up inside some of those lights with some of the darks here, okay? Just to help kind of sit them down a little bit more. Now you don't have to go too far with this. Just a little bit here and there is loads. And we could try some uprights in this one. Okay? And it just brings out those darks that little bit more, doesn't it? The next thing I'm going to do is, with my new fan brush again, I'm going to go some nice real bright ones, but I'm going to start putting them in uprights. So I'm going to create like little bluebells. So let's try that and see how that works. Again, magenta, some white, and I want nice bright colours this time, and some phaylo blue. And because they're bluebells, I'm going to start first with this more of a bluey colour. Let's get some more white in that. And what I'm going to simply do is start adding little uprights like this, you see. Just to give the impression of the bluebell sort of poking out on top here and there. You see, and they're sort of cutting into that dark then as well. Here and there, you see. Now, you don't have to go absolutely crazy with this. It's just sort of roughening the surface up just a little bit. Over here, we can start creating a few going around like that, following the curves, you see, and going up into the darks, because going up into the darks helps to separate the bushes. Does that make sense? It just looks more natural, I find. Put a few more down here, and then I'm going to go nice and bright but warm for over here. So I'm going to take a lot more magenta and some crimson, and then some white. Now we don't want any muddy colours in this, so let's try and keep it nice and bright, okay? What I'm actually going to do is, I'll take some crimson and some Naples yellow, okay? A nice warm, bright pink. Now if you feel it's too warm, give it a little white and give it a bit more pink. I just want to come over here and just kind of touch the tops of those, creating those lines just a little bit more, because the sun is catching these over here, so it's going to be nice and warm. One or two here, and perhaps one or two on this one as well, and even down here as well. So they're poking up, hitting the sun. Okay? And I think lastly, what I might do is go for some nice real bright ones. So I'll take some phaylo blue, lots and lots of white, and a hint of crimson. And this should really bring them to life. So I'm just dabbing it kind of here and there on the outside edges where you think that sun might be catching them. Just kind of a hint of it just here and there with the corner of the fan brush. Just creating some little dots, suggesting some of the bluebells. You see, it's just very, very lightly done. And again, I'm not going to overdo this because I don't want to spoil it, you know what I mean? I want to kind of just do it nice and simple, and if you're happy with it then, go with that. So another thing I'm going to do is add a little touch of green into some of this. I can see some greens in there, some lovely greens. So phaylo blue and cadmium yellow, and I'm going to go with a nice warm green. So if you take two of those colours together, then take a little hint of burnt sienna. That'll give us a nice warm green. And with that, I'm just going to pop a little of that colour in just here and there, just to suggest little touches of green popping up in between here and there. And really all I'm doing is dabbing it with the fan brush, but it does give you the impression of these lovely little bits of green popping up here and there. Little bit of yellow on the brush, just to give those touch of highlight. Okay, just on the tops. And it really does work, doesn't it? One last thing that I am going to do, and you see how quickly now that we did this, it was just so quick. One thing I will do actually is, I want to soften this kind of off into the distance slightly. So I'm going to mix kind of a light bluey pink. Let's take some crimson and a little magenta. And I want to just sort of, let me just mix that now a little bit more. I want to get a slightly darker colour. I want to kind of soften these into that bit of mist off in the distance. Alright, so I'm just going to go along the tops and soften it up. I'm just putting this, I'm hardly even touching the canvas now with this. I'm softening them upwards and kind of coming down into the bluebells at the same time. And it just helps soften that edge. I don't want a very sharp edge up there. Just let them almost disappear off very gently, okay? You see, that does kind of help. It pushes everything off into the distance, doesn't it? And over here then, I'm going to do a lovely soft colour. So I'll take some white, a little crimson, and yeah, that's good. Even with that colour, I'm just going to lighten the very edge of that with some warm colour. Let me try some of this little touch of orangey colour that I have on my palette. It's a little kind of a yellowy orange colour I have. Just going to soften that up very slightly. It's really just to create a nice soft mist in the distance. Let me try a little hint of Naples yellow. So you can see the sun is really sort of hitting that landscape off in that distance, isn't it? Very gently softening it upwards into the sky and the bushes and all that kind of thing. And there we go. Now, I don't want to go ruining it anymore, so what I will do, the last step of this, is perhaps just take a palette knife, okay? And we could just add a hint of colour with the palette knife. A little bit of blue, a little bit of white, and perhaps a little bit of pink, okay? And you could just add a couple of dabs here and there. Really just, I suppose, just to add a little bit more texture to this painting. And you don't have to go mad with this. You don't have to go crazy. You don't have to go this far if you don't like. Just use your fan brush if you want and just leave it as it is. But I think just a touch of some highlights with the palette knife would just help. And then some phthalo blue and some crimson, a nice rich dark bluey purple. Just to put in a couple of darks here and there. And it just sort of adds detail to the painting without actual painting actual detail. Does that make sense? Just it gives a nice touch, you see, just a tiny bit here and there. And I won't go at it anymore. I think I'll just leave it as it is. I'm pretty happy with that. Okay, let's take a look around and see. I might darken some of the clouds. I'm just not quite happy with those clouds. Just on this side. These ones are not too bad. It's just some of those there. I'm just not 100%. So let's see if we can try and improve them just slightly. I'm going to take a small brush and I'm going to mix a nice maybe a dark kind of a purple or something. And I don't want any turpentine in this. So phthalo blue, magenta, some cadmium red, maybe a hint of crimson. I want to just bring a little bit of the dark mauve into some of these clouds. I think it needs it. Do you? I think it does, just a little bit here and there. And we can soften all of this back out if we don't like it, okay? Don't worry. We won't, we'll try not to spoil it. A little bit more cadmium red as it comes down. More cadmium red again. So it's getting much warmer then as it comes down. I just feel they need a little bit of strength. Does that make sense? Just a little bit. Perhaps a touch on some of these as well. Just a little. And perhaps a hint over here. I might put one or two more in just around here and widen them slightly on top. So I think it just gives more of an impact don't you? I think it does. I think it helps just a little. And a nice rich warm cadmium red then just towards the bottom here. Perhaps a little touch across some of those clouds at the bottom. And again, I don't want to ruin this. I'm being very careful. I really don't want to spoil it because it looks really nice. But I feel it just does need a little more in the sky. Sometimes you kind of sit back and you think, you know, I'm just not 100% happy with something. If it's a sky or something, you know, it's worth a while maybe just trying a little bit more, just trying add a tiny bit more colour. It will work. Just be careful not to overdo it. I'm going to take this soft brush now and I'm going to see if I can just try and soften some of them out. The paint has dried slightly on the board, which may make this a bit more difficult, or it might even help. Who knows? But I'm just going to drag them across the board, softening them into the colour underneath, okay? If you feel some of them are too strong, you can brush them back into the paint behind. Okay, that's not bad. I'm fairly happy with that. Now, I'm going to pop just a little bird in here, just to give it a little something. You know, it doesn't have to be anything in particular. You could leave it as it is if you like. It's completely up to yourself. I'm just going to pop a little black bird just in to give it a little silhouette in the sky. Now, I might go up here, opposite the sun. A little bird, nice and simple, and I might add a little hint of colour as well to the centre of the sun. I might just take a little tiny bit of yellow first, just to give it more of a glow, okay? And I'll soften this just out then gently. The nice thing about the MDF board is that it allows you to soften colours outwards like this, brilliant, especially for suns and stuff like that, because it's so smooth. It's completely flat. So I would recommend trying MDF board every now and then. It really is worth it. And then I put a tiny hint of white in the centre. Soften that around. You don't have to be too particularly fussy with all of this. Just get a nice little circle. Okay, just helps give it that little bit of a glow, that's all. And another small thing that I would like to do is, if I get my clean fan brush here, it's not very clean, but it'll do. I want to put some little bit of warmth in here. I'm going to take some magenta and a hint of cadmium red, and then some Naples yellow. And there's a colour there I just really want to put it in. It's has a lovely kind of a warm glow just around here. I'm going to create a little circle, a semicircle. You see this kind of half circle? I'm going to go up and down, just like that. And if you're nervous about this, you don't really have to do this, okay? This is just something I think would help. Then I'll take some Naples yellow with a little cadmium red. And perhaps a little cadmium yellow with a little cadmium red. Don't want to go too far with all of this, just a little. And that, my friends, is the end of that. I'm going to sign it. I'll take some white. I'll come over into the corner here. A little bit of white paint. S. Conway. And I'm happy enough with that, my friends. I'm happy enough. Let me zoom in and show you how this all looks a little bit closer up. There. Now, I can see one thing. One little thing that's starting to annoy me already. And you see, that's what happens in painting when you go back and you look at something and you think, you know, I'm not quite happy with that. I'm going to soften some of that yellow to one side. It seems to be slightly over to one side. I want to kind of center this on the sun. So I'm just going to pull the paint across just to get it a little bit more center, that's all. Perhaps up slightly. Let that soften out, disappear out into that lovely kind of halo around the sun. And that's not bad. And there we go, my friends. And you can see now how easy it was just to do those little bluebells. It was just a fan brush going around in curves and creating the perspective, okay? Just try and keep it simple if you can. This may be a little bit more advanced for the beginners. Just turn the camera here. It may be a little more advanced for the beginners, but do try it. Try and push yourself a little bit. It really does pay off. I'm very happy with this. I'll stick this in a lovely white frame, hang it up in the restaurant, and we'll see if you have any interested parties. Thank you so much for watching. I'll be back again next week with another tutorial. I have a beautiful painting over on Patreon. It's now, if you're watching this, my patrons have already seen this video, but I uploaded a video on Patreon last week of a whale, the tail of a whale coming out of the water and all the lovely water around it. We had a go off that. Pop over and take a look if you like, and you can be supporting me as well at the same time. Thank you so much. Okay, that's it for now. Happy painting. I hope you've learned something today, anything at all. Even a little bit of inspiration goes a long way, I feel. So enjoy that, and thank you so much for watching. I'll see you very soon, and God bless my friends. Take care.